So this is the latest part C of the Kudilar campaign, Kudilar television channel online coming from London. At the end of the day, this banner has got a different time there, which we shall need to change that one. And that's the 2140, isn't it? So we are continuing to look at the role of Tower Hamlets Council during the period February 2015 until the Supreme Court ruled on 26th of February 2021 against Shamima Begum. Now, 2015, Shamima Begum was in the age group of 15, just over 15. And so she was 16, 17, 18. So up to 2018, she was a teenager. And so from 11th of June 2015, when John Biggs got elected as mayor in the London borough of Tower Hamlets, where Shamima Begum is from, and up to the day of the Supreme Court ruling, she was just outside of the teens in 2021, in February 2021. So if we look at the actual kind of calendar, let's say (2015) she was 15 years. 16, she was 16 years. 17, she was 17 years. 18, she was 18. So 2019, she was outside, just outside, getting outside of the teens. So even if she's not yet outside, but she is, let's say, effectively outside of the teens now. So February 2015 to February 2016 is 1 year. February 2017 is 2 years. February 2018 is 3 years. And February 2019 is 4 years. So up to sometime in 2019, these children were teens, children. So it's 4 years. 1, 2, 3, 4 calendar years from February 2015. So you count it again and you can check the actual range. And the range is up to some time during 2019, because we don't know the exact dates of birth of these children. But they were children until they reached or past 19. So they were definitely children for 3 solid years from the time they were reported to have crossed from Turkey into Syria in 2015. So what did the Tower Hamlets Council do to help them? If it is the argument that they didn't publish anything about these girls and that there is nothing, we have checked today, Sunday, 21st of March 2021, and there is nothing in their website, nothing on their website, Tower Hamlets Councils, about any of these girls. Nothing about Shamima Begum, nothing about Sharmina, or Sharmeen, or Sharmini Begum, whatever the actual spelling, Sharmeen Begum, let's say. And nothing about Amira Abbasi and the other girl, the fourth girl. And there is no reason why Tower Hamlets Council should not have anything about these children, because not everything about them is kind of confidential, because the fact that they are actually from Tower Hamlets is not a confidential matter. The fact that they went to the Dainford School, or whatever the school is called, since its name from Dainford has changed, it's not confidential. It's been published all over the place, and it's not breaking anyone's confidentiality. By identifying them, nobody else's identity is being disclosed in that actual process. So expressing concern about the welfare of the children is not breaking their confidentiality, anybody's confidentiality. What we are looking for is evidence that Tower Hamlets Council recognize the existence of these children. And there is nothing. There is nothing on their website, and we check again during this program, this broadcast. And we shall be putting the evidence there. And the Wikipedia entry. Okay, so this is the date that her date of birth is mentioned here as the 25th of August. So, few months into 2019, they were 19 years old. And she is called denaturalized British woman who left the UK age 15 to join the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant in Syria. And I'm looking for the other girls' names. Okay. So we know that the other girl is Sharmeen Begum, and the other two that traveled with her, Shamima Begum, was Amira Abbasi. Now the spelling is wrong, but I'm saying it right, the pronunciation. Amira Abbasi and Khadija Sultana. Those two girls and Shamima Begum went together. And they went there 2 months after Sharmeen Begum traveled out of the country. And as we said yesterday, Sharmeen Begum was brainwashed by a group of people that are detailed in the Wikipedia entry about her. We're not repeating the details. Anyone who wants to know the facts can check. And what we are saying about Tower Hamlets Council, going back, is this thing: safeguarding children. And we shall be. Now, this is the result, and I'm just giving an idea. This is a Google search on safeguarding children without any qualification, and that said, it produces 68,600,000 results in 63 seconds. And there is this thing in the UK government website, and it's headed Working Together to Safeguard Children, a guide to interagency working to safeguard and promote the welfare of children. And it says this guidance applies to all organizations and agencies who have functions relating to children. Specifically, this guidance applies to all local authorities, clinical commissioning groups, police, and all other organizations and agencies to set out in Chapter 2. It applies in its entirety to all schools. It applies to all children up to the age of 18 years, whether living with their families in state care or living independently. This document should be complied with unless exceptional circumstances arise. And this guidance is issued under the Section 7 of the Local Authority Social Services Act 1970, which requires local authorities in their social services functions to act under the general guidance of the Secretary of State. And then it says Section 10, brackets 8 of the Children Act 2004, which requires each person or organization to which the Section 10 duty applies to have regard to any guidance given to them by the Secretary of State. And all of these are, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 separate paragraphs that refer to other details, or 10 paragraphs. And it says what is the guidance for. The statutory guidance should be read and followed by strategic and senior leaders and frontline practitioners of all organizations and agencies as set out in Chapter 2 of this document. And then it says, so much is written there. Children have said that they need vigilance to have adults notice when things are troubling them. Understanding and action, stability, respect, information, explanation, support to be provided, support in their own right, as well as a member of the family. Advocacy to be provided with advocacy to assist them in putting forward their views. And protection, to be protected against all forms of abuse and discrimination, and the right to special protection and help if a refugee. And there are so many parts. So altogether there are 19 different paragraphs. And the 19th one says that the local authority and its social workers have specific roles and responsibilities to lead the statutory assessment of children in need. And it goes on to describe what children in need are, that is Section 17, Children Act 1989, and to lead children protection inquiries, child protection inquiries. It's crucial that social workers are supported through effective supervision arrangements by practice leaders and practice supervisors, as defined under the National Assessment and Accreditation System, who have the lead role in overseeing the quality of social work practice. Designated principal social workers have a key role in developing the practice and the practice methodology that underpins direct work with children and families. Now, all of these are obviously about various other things, other things that is different from things like these children being brainwashed and misled into flying out of the country altogether, because all of these other things are based on the assumption that the children are in place at home in the country. Now, safeguarding cannot be completely listed. The duties of safeguarding cannot be completely listed because many unforeseen and extraordinary, exceptional things could happen, requiring safeguarding action to be taken to safeguard children, which is what this one is about, this particular series of activities that these girls have been involved in. And that is what has happened. So the question is, what are the steps that the Tower Hamlets Council took? As we said, between the calendar year 2015, generally, and up to, let's say, the period of they are being reported to have crossed into Syria, and the 23rd of April 2015, when the regime of Lutfur Rahman as mayor ended and the new regime began, kind of interim regime, which lasted from 23rd of April up to 11th of June. So 1.5 months, in which the council became separate and independent from Lutfur Rahman Frontage as the incumbent in the post of mayor. And that mayor, being the executive mayor, meant that the executive powers actually became fragmented and other people took over responsibilities, supposedly. And then it went on until the 11th of June 2015, when a new person was put in place to become the incumbent in the post of the elected mayor. Now, from that day onwards, 11th of June 2015, the new responsibility of the newly installed administration began. And from that point, 11th of June 2015, up to 2018, 15, 16, 17, 18, 4 calendar years. So 4 calendar years passed, during which time these children from Tower Hamlets, these girls, were continuously in mainstream news in this country for various reasons, all to do with the fact that they were involved in all kinds of risky, dangerous, life-threatening activities. And throughout those publicly known and publicly made references to them, Tower Hamlets, as the local council, which was the lead or leader of various other agencies, including its own internal agencies, was in existence as a local authority. And there was no barrier to the Tower Hamlets Council getting information about what was happening and what information was already publicly available to the whole world. So the question is, what action did Tower Hamlets Council take in those 4 calendar years, starting from the 11th of June 2015, when a new regime was installed with the so-called election of a new elected mayor? What actions? Think about that. We are not talking about a period of long kind of, if you like, disappearance of the entity of the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council. It never ceased to be a council. It remained in continuous existence as an entity, as a local authority. Its frontage, the facade, the face that the elected mayor kind of adds, it wasn't there for only a few weeks. But apart from that, a new face was installed. So what did the new face, new mayor, new administration do to rescue those girls, to help those girls, to safeguard those girls, wherever they were? Supposing those girls were not known to exist for a period of time, whatever the period of time, and then that happened following their kidnap, not their travel to Syria, but they were being kidnapped. Let's put a more understandable, familiar kind of narrative. If those girls were kidnapped and suddenly the kidnappers, let's say, discontinued communication to whoever was concerned about their welfare, what would happen if that is how the scenario was? There would be an additional outcry, and all kinds of emergency things would have been looked for in order to safeguard those girls, even if they were for temporary period declared to be not contactable and have disappeared again. So this scenario, what did Tower Hamlets Council do? Throughout the period of February 2015, up to the period when Lutfur Rahman's regime ended, a day later, 2 days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, it didn't last long. After Lutfur Rahman's being kicked out of the post of elected mayor by Richard Mori on the 23rd of April 2015, the administration in Tower Hamlets Council associated with Lutfur Rahman didn't last very long. And it didn't last at all after the 11th of June, when a new incumbent was installed. So when the new incumbent was installed in that post, was that new incumbent in the post of elected mayor in the name of Tower Hamlets Borough and in the name of Tower Hamlets Council, were his hands tied? That is to say, was he prevented from taking executive action? The answer is no. Evidence is that the first thing that John Biggs did as the executive mayor took place literally hundreds of yards from the school which these girls were attending, but not about their school. It was to give impunity from liability to a bunch of criminals associated with the Reach Mass Center in the Bethnal Green Road, not far from the corner junction of Brick Lane with the Bethnal Green Road. And in effect, John Biggs wrote off a multi-million pound debt that the Reach Mass Center owed to Tower Hamlets Council. Now, even if the Reach Mass Center and its debts were not written off, nobody would be put at risk, nobody's life would be put at risk, because the kind of dispute between Tower Hamlets Council as an entity and the Reach Mass Center as the people who owed millions of pounds to the council had been going on for quite a long time. And nobody had died, nobody had been put at risk, and nobody's career was even at risk. So by ordinary definition of words, there was no emergency. There was no emergency that warranted Tower Hamlets Council to so kind of speedily write off the debt that Reach Mess Center owed to the Tower Hamlets Council as an entity. That is the executive action that John Biggs took. While those children, by all accounts, by all imaginations, were absolutely shivering in the deadly uncertainty and the dire danger that they had been led into in Syria. Only they felt how unsafe and how threatened they felt, and how badly they needed help, how desperately they wanted to be back home. All the accounts in the Fleet Street papers about this Sharmina Begum saying that she would never want to go back to or come back to Britain. These are yet to be verified. These are reports that have been published by hostile kind of media, briefed by hostile kind of agencies and government sources, whatever. And the hostility would not exist. As Anish Kapoor, this sculptor, has said, if she were white. Of course, he has said about Shamima Begum, but the same analogy applies to Sharmina Begum just as well, just as effectively, because both of them have similar ethnicity background, not nationality background, but ethnicity background. So when those girls were in a state of uncertain, indescribable terror, while misrepresented in the media, by the media, the only source of corporate kind of rescue that existed, and existed under well-defined legal duties, was the local council. And nobody issued one single statement on behalf of the Tower Hamlets Council describing what their position was. I'm not saying they should have agreed with the girls, or they should have agreed, retrospectively, let's say, with what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is they never, ever published any statement that showed that they even recognized the existence of these girls. Think about that. So these girls were waiting for the final deadly assault on them to come. And I think, as at this moment, the publicly available information is that two girls, Khadija Sultana and Amira Abbasi, lost their lives. I mean, that is the current state of knowledge at this time, given the kind of access that we can have to publicly available information. And that shows that both of those two girls have died. But the dates are not certain, not at least in front of me. But collectively, those four girls, because they were friends, all four of them were friends. Although three went 3 months or 2.5 months after the first one went, but they joined together, they met. And the connection I'm making with the Tower Hamlets Council and these girls' plight is the when the first one went there, that is Sharmina Begum, the other three, according to one account, again we see on the public domain, not in any private communication. We have no private communication with anyone about any of this. So we are diagnosing, we are analyzing, and we are putting together a coherent narrative based on only publicly available sources. Now, according to that particular description, these three other girls went to Syria to get that one back to Britain. 15-year-old children. I mean, it is absolutely possible that they would have thought that kind of thing. But to say that these girls were kind of seriously, critically, kind of solidly committed jihadis, I mean, is really something. They were not, no child of that age could be so determined and so clear about whatever the press, the media have accused them of being. And we come back to the fallacy of that accusation. But whatever the state of their mind and their attitude and outlook, as described by the hostile, anti-Muslim, racist Fleet Street, these children have never been, none of them, not one of them, during the period, let's say starting December 2014, when Sharmina Begum won, the first one. So December 2014 up to February 2015, which is 3 months, 3 calendar months. None of these 4 girls has been accused of committing a crime. I am not saying that they did not commit any crime. I'm not saying that. So notice what language I'm using. But none of these children has been accused of committing any crime. Number 2, none of these children has been put under a process of being arrested. What am I saying there? Because they are not in the British jurisdiction, and they're not in a jurisdiction that is necessarily friendly. So I'm saying a process. And I'm there relying on the international law and the treaties between nations. It is possible in exceptional circumstances to enter into an interim arrangement, to deal with nationals that are either wanted or are in similar situational loci, that is, positions in terms of the law. So none of those children has been accused of being an offender or a criminal. None of them has been charged with an equivalent to a charging process in context of their various locations and the jurisdictional differences. And none of these children has been arrested. Then none of these children has been tried, and none of these children has been found to have committed any crime. That is the solid trail of these various lines. So, while these girls were reported missing and in a state of being unreachable by their parents or families, let's say, the local council should have made its position statement that we can do this, we want to do this, we cannot do this, and we are being prevented from doing this by this legal restrictions. Nobody says that if they made those known, anybody's confidential information would be breached. So Tower Hamlets Council has no leg to stand on for its silence. Remember what we're saying? Tower Hamlets Council has no leg to stand on for its absolutely repugnant, outrageous silence for all these calendar years. Whether it was Lutfur Rahman, whether it was John Biggs from the 11th of June, the legal duty on the council did not change. So if Lutfur Rahman says, I did no wrong, and if John Biggs repeats him by saying, I didn't do any wrong, it makes no difference to the legal obligation that each time, during each period, during each part of the period, the council was obliged under the law, under the regulations, to safeguard these children. And it didn't do that. If the council had any legal kind of reason for neglecting its duties, which it did, then it should have said, we did not neglect because of this. But it didn't make any statement. And say, for example, in the ordinary way the councils used to meet outside or before the pandemic, there is to be two kind of forms of meetings. One is the confidential session, and this confidential session would be described in writing, saying that under this act, this particular session or section of the meeting would be held in confidence in camera, and public and members of the press would not be allowed to observe. Fine, nobody argued about any of that. So the same thing, the Tower Hamlets Council could do the same thing in relation to making public statements concerning the council's position on safeguarding these children. If, for example, under this act or that act, they were not able to safeguard these children and they were given some kind of exemptions from responsibility, then they should say that. That doesn't break any of these children's confidentiality, nor any of the council officials or employees' confidentiality of operation. Remember what I'm saying. Confidentiality of operation, that is to say, all the contracts and communications the individual employees would make with other agencies, including the security services, in this context, which is be involved, they could be kept secret. And I wouldn't ask them to be published, and I would not expect them to publish them, except to say that don't publish the contents, but say what law said generally, what exemption the council would be entitled to exercise, and abandon these children without safeguarding them. That would not be breaking anybody's law. So the Tower Hamlets Council's website, which we have visited several times during Sunday, and which in the course of this program I'm going to visit again, and so that it's absolutely clear as to the legality and the evidence of what I'm saying, yeah? So let's put Shamima's name there on the website. So the search results on Shamima, and it reads, your search for Shamima returned 0 results. This has been the result the Town Nurse Council website has been giving for the last 48 hours. And let's try with the Sharmina, the other girl with the Begumbar Sharmina, whom we discussed at length yesterday. And I've spelled the Sharmina as the entry on her on Wikipedia spells the name. Sharmena. So let's see what the result is. Okay, it says, your search for Sharmina returned 0 results. And then there is another line. Did you mean Sharmeen? Of course I didn't mean Sharmeen because it's Sharmina. And it says that, yeah? So anyone watching this, whatever time they're watching it or whatever date they're watching it, this is being broadcast. This part has been broadcast at 22:19 hours GMT on Sunday, 21st of March 2021. And they can check the veracity of what I'm saying, because the website or the web portal of the Town Nurse Council, because it carries a lot of subsidiary websites and operational details, has got no mention of Shamima Begum. That's the point. Under what law can Town Nurse Council say that if it puts Shamima's name online on its website, that by doing that and by doing that act alone, they're disclosing anything about Shamima Begum? What law? The law of jungle and law of denying and denials could do that. And that is not law. That is not due process. That would be something like looking for an excuse, any excuse. Let's say they've got Shamima Begum, let's put it another way. On the internet, yes. So let's search for the name, under the name, this search kind of entry. So we've got Shamima Begum, and it has got 2,476,000 results in 44 seconds. And the first result is about an item 3 days ago about Shamima Begum, was published in The Guardian. And then the second main item is a case, Shamima Begum case in the BBC, which was actually peddling the Supreme Court's rubber stamping of the Home Office's lying line. And this continues, and it may not have all the 2,470,000 results, 70,000 results, but essentially it is millions. So millions of results, items about Shamima Begum, and they're not being banned from being published by Google, which means that they are not being contested or identified or censored because of any confidentiality, any privacy, any serious privacy issues or concerns or security. That is 2,470,000 items listed by the headline on the results of the Google site. So if that can be 2,470,000 results on Google, about Shamima Begum. How dare Tower Hamlets Council say that it couldn't put a single item because it would breach Shamima Begum's privacy. What privacy? The way she has been treated, there is no privacy. That is to say, all her private thoughts and whatever have been published without any hesitation by all these media. Their motivation is, of course, different from our motivation. Our motivation is to find out if the Harmless Council behaved with due diligence and due care, duty of care. The duty to safeguard the children as well as duty of care generally applies. Where is the evidence that the Harmless Council cared about any duty whatsoever? Anyone watching this and anyone belonging to the Harmless Council or whichever regime must carefully listen to what I'm saying and I've been saying and understand the legality, because I'm pure legality. In this and in every presentation and every argument, I'm pure legality and lawfulness. So don't challenge anything I'm saying because you've been told to challenge. Just and dance on the grass of Altawali Park on the orders of the SWP's racist woman who stopped me from giving the speech in October 2016. Because she was surrounded by lots and lots of mental stooges. And this being Sheila McGregor, the racist, who was employed at the Central Foundation School for a number of years, where she brainwashed Bangladeshi Muslim girls in an attempt to make them socialists. Socialism, as personified by the racist liar Sheila McGregor, does not exist. Sheila McGregor now is a pathetic racist white woman, frustrated with a life of complete utter idiocies and racism. She goes around Altawali Park pushing Muhammad Haq off the microphone. How dare she? She didn't push John Biggs from the microphone because John Biggs was there, given a stupid speech and spiel. Sheila McGregor, so nothing wrong with John Biggs, because Sheila McGregor is a racist woman, visually, seriously, permanently challenged. Her vision is completely, absolutely made dysfunctional, and she cannot see any person who is not of the pigmentation borne by the diminutive John Biggs. Now these people, Sheila McGregor, have not made any call about Shamima Begum being protected by the safeguarding children duties owed to her and owed to the other three girls by Tower Hamlets Council. The Socialist Workers' Party is called correctly on its evidence by its detractors and opponents and observers Socialist W ... party. And that W, the word with the W, is a commonly known word that starts with W. And that actually defines the pathetic, corrupt role played by the so-called left. And this left has been exposed time and again as maintaining corrupt, collusive silence with the likes of the corrupt, crooked Tower Hamlets Council regime, no matter who has been at the front of the corrupt council. So we say, and as I have said many times, on the 29th of October 2010, which was a Friday, I filmed Lutfur Rahman coming out of the Brick Lane Mosque after the Jummah prayers, and I had said my prayers somewhere else before I arrived there to film that historic 2 or 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and I'm going to give the details. And Lutfur Rahman, everyone who has seen him since he became installed in mayor position, or even before, he cringe-makingly practiced the art of giving a salute or something like that, or something. I don't know how to put the hand because I have not saluted anyone in my life in any such way. Probably because I have not held a corrupt post any time in my life, ever. But Lutfur Rahman's signature kind of salute is there on the film, and we shall share it in due time, due course. It's not possible to share it in the kind of logistical format that we are using for these broadcasts. So he gave me a salute, and he held his hand up in the salute form as he descended down the steps, because I was on the main floor of the Brick Lane and he was coming from inside the mosque. And Lutfur Rahman was surrounded by at least 5 or 6 persons who looked as if they were kind of accompanying somebody who has achieved something by getting in as mayor. And when Lutfur Rahman came and leveled with me physically on the street, my first thing was that he sit down with me and listen to me. Because that is what I do, and I have done all my years in the campaign that preceded that particular moment. Everything I say to any leader, so-called, any careerist, anybody that I have said anything to in that kind of way, has been proven to have been a liar as against my truth and against the truth that I've told about their future, including, this is just contextual, but it's important because of the name that would kind of give the impression of the breadth and the range of my encounters with these people, including in the 1960s, Zulfikar Bhutto. I encountered Zulfikar Bhutto quite unexpectedly and without any plan in the 1960s at the Institute of Engineers in Dhaka, which is the capital city of Bangladesh now. It was the capital city of East Pakistan in the 1960s. And I do operate politically and socially and morally independently. I have always done and I am doing now. And this campaign for justice for these children is absolutely integral part of my independent action for justice, which I'm absolutely confident will change the whole creepy careerists records of the last 6 years, and it will establish recognition for these children, these 4 girls. And I have personally, as well as my organizations, adopted these girls as our own because of the desperate, despicable abandonment by everyone of these girls. Now, they didn't have to be born to parents like me, let's say, who knows things and who is aware and who is uniquely conscious and conscientious. They were born to parents they were born to. That was not a crime. Now, if the council says that, what about their parents? The first answer is, you morons, shut up. The parents are not in a position to monitor the children like that, who are targeted like that. So don't blame the parents for that one. What were they supposed to do? Their mothers or the mother, this Sharmina lost her mother in January. So, her mother died of cancer. Have you got an idea? So, some families do very bad things. But the liability for those bad things have to be laid at their door after proper consideration, not whimsically. I know that I'm the one who says most of these things are happening, wrong things are happening in so many families. But when I say that, I don't say that go and round up or blame all these parents for so many things that go wrong in the children's experiences. I'm saying children's experiences. So out in the street, out in the school, or in a kind of playground or whatever, these children deserve to be sympathetically and respectfully observed as friends. Welfare, people who must observe them must be their friends or must have the best interests of these children at heart, these observers or these people who are bound to duty bound, who are paid to look after the children. And the description that teachers, while the children are in the teacher's care, they act the teachers as loco parentis. And that applies to these children as well as others who are not necessarily exposed to the same levels of dangerous risks to their lives. So when these girls were aged 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, let's say, when I spoke to Lutfur in Brick Lane on Friday, the 29th of October 2010, I didn't know any of this was going to happen. And let's say that nor did, let's say, Lutfur. But the difference between me and Lutfur was that I was not in post. That did not disqualify me from having a better view of the world and a better view on the solutions than Lutfur did. But the technical access that he had to be exerted by him based on my advice, which he lied about taking. Because as he came level to me, I said, you sit down and listen to me. And he promised that he would. Now the promise was accompanied by a qualifier, which was, let me settle down first, he said. Let me settle down in the post first, which is a reasonable thing to say. And I reasonably accepted that and allowed him the time to settle down. He was settling down while at the same time looking for excuses to not sit down and listen to me. If he had sat down and listened to me, then I would have said about the youth service, I would have said about the children's service. I would have said about all the other kind of duties that the Tower Hamlets Council was under and still is under, but was not discharging those duties. And I would have given him strategic list of things to do, as I've always done to people who personally profited, and were high achievers on their fields if they accepted my advice. And my advice is above and beyond the reach of anybody, any careerist. It comes from a higher level, whatever it is. And the highest level is my absolute freedom from any interest in getting into a post. Because once you get into a post, you get seriously pushed in a position of being at risk of losing your integrity. And it takes superhuman abilities and determination to not give in to the temptations and corruptions. I know that, and that is why I don't go for posts and positions. What I do is more powerful and more effective, contrary to the mythology that you have to be in power, in position of power to do important things. That is not true. I don't believe that. You have to be truthful while in power and alert to the truth coming from whatever source. And if you are free from reliance on the internal bureaucratic inherent corruption, if you're reliant on those, then you are doomed. And Luther Roman was doomed from the day he said to me that he would sit down, and he lied to me in saying that, because he was lying in his mind, as the following years have shown. Not about Shamima Begum only, but about everything else that he did. So when anyone supporting him says on the sort of campaign that they are now doing, that they said that keep the mayor system, they say it is tried and tested. They said it worked. Now, you have to be in the outer planet, outer spaces, to say that about Tower Hamlets in the last 11 years. Since I asked Lutfur Rahman to sit down with me, and he said he would sit down with me after I got settled down in that post. All of that conversation took place right outside the Brick Lane Mosque in Brick Lane, London E1, in the afternoon of Friday, 29th of October 2010, which was a few days after the election to the post of mayor, elected mayor, that had happened. And Lutfur Rahman, I say within quotation marks, got in. Now, when on 5th of January or thereabouts, 2010, I had said to people in the vicinity of Greater X Street that elected mayor in Tower Hamlets is guaranteed to bring disrepute and scandal to the Bangladeshi community. Now, I don't know who would admit that, who would remember that, but anyone who watches these Khudila TV programs, and anyone who has been seriously watching what I say, how I say these things, and how I bring in various independent and very, very uncommon references. For example, when I say uncommon, how many presenters appearing like I do would have record of having put a question to India's Prime Minister Morarji Desai in 1977 at the India House in the Strand in London in 1977. How many can you find among Indian broadcasters in India or anywhere else. But I did ask the question, it was not very long. And my question instantly exposed the facade that Morarji Desai was wearing and had been allowed to wear. He was a morally compromised individual, and he was absolutely intimidated in his mind about saying anything critical about the British imperialist races. So my report later that week in a paper that Rifraf Ali, that is to say Hansi Publications, Arif Ali, operated a number of titles, and one of the minor titles carried my article about that week. And the week had also witnessed my continuing to question the then, quote, president of Bangladesh, Ziaur Rahman, who was in London as well. Those two were there because the Commonwealth Heads of Government was taking place in 77 in London. And I only asked a very short question of Morarji Desai. And I asked him, what did he, Morarji Desai, have to say about Commonwealth countries' students studying in London, in the UK, being racistly attacked? What would he say? Very rational question, very topical, and very sensible and very necessary. Desai didn't want to comment on that. What he did was he went round and round, no matter how short the kind of length or the duration was, but he was looking for an excuse not to say anything to the point. So I used the expression tautology. In that article that I wrote in 77 about Morarji Desai, I said that he indulged in a tautological trip of denial of the truth, which is what he did. Now, I'm not quoting myself, but tautology was there, and tautological was there. I mean, about the same time, not necessarily the same week, I had questioned, as I said before, not before today, but in a previous kind of broadcast, a number of them, I confronted then Prime Minister, who was in situ not long after Harold Wilson quit. The most racist Prime Minister, Labour Prime Minister, James Callaghan. I call him Callaghan, not Callahan. I asked Callaghan the same question, that racists are attacking people from the Commonwealth countries. I made it topical because of Commonwealth. And the racist Callaghan responded with the darkest of the moods and darkest of the phrases. I'm not quoting him at all. And that is the legacy of the Labour Party in Britain. Labour Party in power has been misled and misrepresented by racists, successive racists. And that is the challenge that I face and I tackle for all the people of the subcontinent, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and from Africa and others. Nobody else is doing this. And I stand up to, and I question, I challenge, and diagnose the racists at the given time and demand answers. And answers never come, so I diagnose the kind of absence of the answers. And I then tell the people that be aware. When in Britain, be aware of racism as the main challenge and barrier to your humanity, entire humanity, your entirety of your humanity. That same year, 1977, is the year when the Commission for Racist Enslavement was launched, the Commission for so-called racial equality. CRE. And it was announced at a press conference held in the vicinity of Fleet Street in April 1977 by a very stupid man called David Lane. Now, Lane was the Conservative ex-member of Parliament who was appointed by Callaghan or Callaghan-fronted regime of Labour government at 10 Downing Street to be the first chairman of the Commission for Racist Enslavement. And those who were present at that press conference launch would know, if they're around, that I was the only one who asked any substantial, critical, diagnostic question, which David Lane was unable to answer. Not an exceptional response. This is the pattern. Morarji Desai couldn't answer my question. James Callaghan could not answer my question. And back in Dhaka, at the Institute of Engineers, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto couldn't answer my question. Remember what I did? I asked him 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 9 questions. And after my 9th question, Zulfikar Ali literally was sweating. And he wiped his sweat by his hand as he began to march very fast out of the venue. The historic magnitude of my intervention has not been written down yet, but I am telling you, it was absolutely historic because Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was there in Dhaka on a plan to recruit the cream of the Dhaka youth to his People's Party or political kind of launch that he was making as part of his challenge to his boss, former boss, the military, General Ayub Khan, who was the head of the martial law government, which Zulfikar Ali Bhutto served as a foreign minister, until Bhutto was given the sack by Ayub Khan. And Zulfikar Ali Bhutto followed that sacking by launching his own political movement. And anyone who was around and active in the 1960s in Pakistan would know that Zulfikar Bhutto was given by the mainly corrupt mainstream media the highest possible profile by the media politically. And a lot of it was linked with the fact that Bhutto was a British schooled and British employed kind of academic of sorts. He was, for a very short period, a law academic in the law lecturer at the University of Southampton, I think, from where Bhutto picked him. Ayub Khan picked him and gave him the job. And the job was taken away from him. And the snub was very badly received by Bhutto. So he launched the campaign to topple Ayub Khan by a popular kind of uprising and movement. And he chose that time to come to East Pakistan or Dhaka with the pure purpose that as he was the most kind of overhyped political personality in that Pakistan, he would be kind of swamped by the likely fans. The majority of the English schooled East Pakistani cream of youth. Now they are all in their 20s, as I was. And the whole Institute of Engineers, that meeting was only attended by, select kind of young, affluent young persons. the majority of whom had attended the English medium Notre Dame school or Notre Dame College or similar things. And none of them, I didn't know any of them, I didn't have any contact with any of them. I just went there as an independent journalist, as I always do, to see the evidence, nothing else. I went there to see the evidence and actually see the reality of Bhutto, what he was made of. That was the curiosity. That was not a challenge. I didn't go there to challenge him whatsoever. I didn't even know until it happened that I was going to ask him any question. But having suffered his introduction, I was astounded by the emptiness of his delivery and his content. It was stupid, idiotic, arrogant, ignorant, ill-informed, ill-researched, ill-read, ill-studied, whatever. I didn't say any of this to him. I said, given that you said this, what is your evidence? Whatever the thing was. I was not there on behalf of anybody. I was just there on behalf of my conscience and to establish the reality against the myth and the mythology of the profile that had been painted of Bhutto by the mainstream media in Pakistan, which was very powerful, some of the organs, both in Karachi and in Dhaka, and then less so in Pindi and Lahore. But they had Bhutto as the prime number one, most important, most kind of attractive personality, political personality. That's what they said about him. So when I said to him to give the evidence, Bhutto mumbled and he didn't really give the evidence. Anyone watching this will know that. My questions are not that easy to answer factually, truthfully, by the people that I put the questions to. So that was the case with Bhutto. And he didn't answer. He mumbled something, but he didn't answer. Then he said something else, and I asked the second question. And I did the same thing, not repeating the identical kind of previous question, but I matched the inadequacy of his second question with a different interrogation. And this appropriately went on up to the ninth question. When I asked him the ninth question, Bhutto, who was standing on the stage well above us because we were on the kind of level in front of the stage, and I was at the very back. And he did this with his, and he wiped the sweat from his brows or his face, and he did a right turn, and he did a very fast exit. It is possible that he was absolutely fuming with anger. Two things happened there. Number one, that Bhutto, the great Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, was stopped in his tracks. And I was not aligned to any party or anything. As I said, my only companion is my conscience and my interest in looking for the evidence. And then my conscience comes to play, and I apply my conscience and I write about the evidence to give the appropriate report. But with the Bhutto event, I mean, not only did I destroy his plan to become mobbed by the fascinated fans of East Pakistan, he went and there is no fanfare. But even worse for him was that his visit, his speech at the Institute of Engineers was not given any coverage of any memorable kind of size or length or prominence. So effectively, I destroyed that plan, that particular plot by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And I was not there acting for anybody except my conscience, as I say. So this is the reason why I'm not prime minister or I am not president or whatever. I could have been any of those things. And I can be anything I want to be in political terms, but that would involve me kind of allowing liars to be dictating to me anything. And I cannot take the liar's instruction, can I? And the political system in this country, as well as back in those days in the 1960s Pakistan and today's Bangladesh, and come to that, today's Pakistan, and come to that today's India, there is no political integrity anywhere. I mean, today's Hindu, or was it the Times of India, I'll check that one, has got an item about an Indian minister demanding crores, 500 crores or something, bribe or something from somebody. Now, this is the reality. Indian politicians are big-time thugs and robbers and dacoits. And this is the story in Bangladesh, in the story in Pakistan as well. So the people who are holding these little posts in Tower Hamlets as councillors or mayors or whatever, what do they know about what I have been doing and what I do? I am not from the village, coming to London being a kind of doing selfies with some kind of British white person or whatever. The record of my action against crooks of all colors and all descriptions is longer than the numbers of selfies that all of these morons can put together, going back to the beginning of the internet age. As I said, Morarji Desai was cracked. I absolutely exposed Desai as a very timid, cowardly person who didn't have the courage to actually challenge the racist attacks that were taking place against the people of the subcontinent or from the subcontinent. And yet Morarji Desai's biographers have painted him as being such a sage. He was not. He was a coward. And he was an ignorant man who didn't have the depth of knowledge that it requires to challenge racism and challenge injustice and assert the rights of people and equality and all the other things. And so therefore, termless councillors must answer the question that I'm putting to them about why they have neglected their duties owed to these girls who desperately needed the help of the council and the help of the various individual agencies that are supposed to work with the council. The questions to Sajid Javid, covering a different part of the period in which these children were mistreated and put at risk and were in serious need of serious help and were being deprived of the help. My question to Sajid Javid is substantially the same question that I put to him publicly in my public speech I gave at the Altavali Park on the 4th of May 2018. Not long after Sajid Javid had gone public, wrongly saying that the left in Britain was accusing him or calling him a coconut or Uncle Tom or whatever. Either coconut or Uncle Tom. So my advice to Sajid Javid at that time was, okay, you have made the complaint, but you can only stop that tag being put to you or attached to you. Coconut or Uncle Tom. You can stop behaving like a coconut and people won't call you a coconut. I told him. Now that is the time he should have paid heed to what I said, because I am the definitive campaigner from Tower Hamlets. And next thing he did, what did he do? He snatches the nationality, citizenship of this child born and brought up in Tower Hamlets. Her citizenship and rights, he snatches, thus confirming that he is not only a coconut, but he is a very rotten coconut, this Sajid Javid. So anyone who is in Tower Hamlets as a councillor now and is desperate to appease this diminutive John Biggs, the corrupt mayor, and therefore looking for any excuse, stupid excuse, to justify Tower Hamlets Council's failure to put Shamima Begum's name on the website, must understand this. Don't do it. Either stop defending Biggs or stop making any claim that you know better than we do in the community. Tower Hamlets Council has failed. Admit it. If you can't admit it, stay quiet. We shall be doing more analysis and diagnosis of the failures of Tower Hamlets Council, failures of the local MPs, failures of the general body of members of parliament in the House of Commons, and we shall be continuing to demand justice for these children. And the reason why we should continue to demand justice for these children is to do with the fact that if we don't uphold these children's kind of rights, then any number of other people from these backgrounds would be unceremoniously robbed of their citizenship, of their civil liberties. It is that bad, it is that dire. And as I have said, in the context of looking at the Indian and South film industry, cinema industry, I'm doing that because I'm taking a look at the role of the Indian cinema, both the Bombay ones and the South Indian ones, like Tamil, Telugu, and Kannada, and all those ones that are doing better business commercially than the Bombay ones, which is crumbling. But essentially, despite the variation in their actual commercial kind of returns, the themes and the narratives and the scripts of these films are almost similar, identical. And I've called them factory-produced scripts. And I'm looking at the period from August 1947 up to now. And there are two sides to the actual disease. Because in every script, every film, most of the so-called blockbuster films, which I never saw before, I'm only seeing now. The only blockbuster I saw ever was the film featuring Sanjeev Kumar and Hema Malini, Sita or Gita, or Gita or Sita. because it was an absolutely humorous kind of film, although it was copied from something else, but the two actors made it absolutely amazing. So that was the only blockbuster I had seen since it was released in the early 70s, but the others I hadn't seen. Now, recently I've been watching dozens and dozens of films from Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, and other languages and dubbed into Hindi and not dubbed into Hindi. And despite the fact that they're done in different languages, these are the same scripts almost, factory produced scripts. And they cover, ritualistically, they cover these various topics. Some of them are essentially kind of made to attack Pakistan or the brainwash the Indian kind of cinema goers or cinema viewers with ideas to hate Pakistan. I have not yet started watching anything Pakistani, so I don't know what the Pakistanis are doing. But the Indian ones are meant to kind of aid the likes of this not Morarji Desai, likes of Modi currently. Desai was in the 70s, but Modi's personality and mythology and all the rest of it. And this week's report about a Pakistani general saying that Pakistan should end its hostile relationship with India is very significant. We shall come to that in due course, but not tonight. Now, the Indian films, not only do they do that against Pakistan, but they also do that against hundreds of millions of Indian people who are in poverty and are being discriminated against under various excuses. And the only group that is not attacked by the films is the established Brahmin controlled section of the society. So these are the issues that I'm looking at, and I shall be publishing in due course the findings. And there is other, the kind of lack of equality suffered by the so-called Dalits, the so-called untouchables, is similar to the inhumane treatment and deprivation foisted on hundreds of millions of Muslims. In terms of the caste backgrounds, the Muslims are not of the lowest class, but they are treated as lower than the lowest caste. And the Indian papers, which you shall examine later, not this minute, but in later editions, are behaving like very uncaring, negligent media. And they say that they are telling the truth, all these slogans. So in the style of telling lies, the Indian English language papers differ from the Fleet Street papers. Because the Fleet Street papers, although all of these are not tabloid, but they are published in a manner that shows that they are in a rush to imitate the tabloid ones. Say, for example, the Financial Times is not a tabloid size one. The Boris Graph is still a free broadsheet, not in a tabloid size. And yet, the meandering and descriptions of the things that the tabloid ones do in a tabloid style, that is the only difference, the meandering description. But the actual agenda that the Financial Times, for example, follows is the same agenda as the tabloid lunacy. titles kind of peddle and spew every day. Sometimes there are exceptional kind of articles about what the Financial Times calls big read or long read, but that's the thing. That's the only difference. Somehow they manage to write editorials that reflect their tabloid narrative, and so on. So, in the coverage of the kind of denial of rights to Shamima Begum and the other three girls, Sharmina and Amira Abbasi and Qadi Sultana, the Fleet Street papers are treating these children as practically non-existent. These are all British-born children. But as Anish Kapoor has said, they are not white in the stricter sense. They're light-skinned, but they're not white-skinned, let's say, which is what is the case with most Asian people or North Indian, northern subcontinent. It's the ethnicity difference. And in the case of these children, they're Muslim as well. So this makes them targets of additional hatred and hostility and prejudice. And none of this is fact, the prejudice and hostility and denial. And given the profile these children had been kind of involved in getting themselves because of the ISIS and Islamic terrorism or radicalism, sort of. A rational observation would demand that these children be treated with much fuller detail about their experiences and how they ended up where they ended up, including, in this context, a scrutiny and examination of the role of local councils, scrutiny and examination of the role of the Home Office in context, similar to the scrutiny that started in 2017 after the Home Office's hostile environment directive became the focus of controversy about the Windrush generation. So the mainstream media, the Fleet Street liars, are repeating the lies given to them by the Home Office and denying the truth to these girls and by extension to the whole communities. Although the Indian community and the Pakistani community in Britain has remained more or less persistently silent about Shamima Begum and these girls, what I have to say to them is this: if Sajid Javid or any Home Secretary or any minister or any department in the UK can take away the citizenship of a British-born child, then none of the Asians, either from Pakistan or India, are any more safe than the children and the young people of Bangladeshi origin. That is the reason why the Pakistanis and the Indians, as communities that is, should take very seriously what has been happening to and against these children. Shamima Begum, Sharmin Begum, Qadi Sultana, Amira Abbasi. Because they have been deprived of their rights contrary to the UK's obligations. The UK is obliged to uphold their rights under international treaties that the UK is currently a signatory to. So we shall be continuing this